I'm Sherilyn Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 290 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. And today I'm talking about how I handle a busy season. And I am going to go ahead and put that in air quotes because the very first thing that I do when I am in the middle of a surge is check myself on my language. And I had to learn kind of a long time ago to lay down the word busy and find a word that was, first of all, maybe more accurate, but also one that put me in a better headspace than the word busy did. You know, I think if busy is a word that you're still using regularly, right? When people say like, how are you? And you're like, oh, we're so busy. It can be factually accurate, but I want you to ask yourself, how does the use of that particular word make me feel? And for me, that word was not making me feel very good. So it somehow teetered on, I'm not in control of the situation. I felt a little bit excusey, like, I'm making some excuses for this. I also felt like it was so trite and expected, and it was almost a cliche, right? Like, who isn't busy? But the reality is we do have seasons that are more of a surge, like there's more happening than there is at our baseline. And our baseline collectively, I know for the people who listen to this show, is pretty full. So the first kind of language reframing that I use is that life is full. My life is very full these days with children and work and community and, my extended family. There's just a lot of pieces kind of moving through the puzzle of my life right now. And it feels very full, but honestly, in a good way. It feels like I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm delighted by this collection of things that I have put in my basket and that I am carrying around with me. And yet there are chapters or seasons where the surge feels bigger. If you picture sort of being at the ocean and those waves are coming in and they're kind of breaking gently against the shore and it's super pleasant. And then all of a sudden the surf gets a little choppier, the waves get higher. You got to work a little harder to navigate that kind of surf. That's what these seasons feel like to me. Like the surges are higher and there's just more agility required and more concentration required to stay afloat, right? To keep our heads above water in this kind of a season. So I thought what might be helpful today is just to share a little bit about what is going on in this season for me, kind of a behind the scenes look at what's happening around here. And then also if I can pepper in a few of the things that I'm noticing myself doing to manage this season with my health and my sanity intact, maybe there's something in there that you can use and carry into your life and get some benefit from. So a couple of things. First of all, we are heading into May-cember, as I think of it, as when I'm recording this episode. And by the time it airs, it will be mid-May. And May, notoriously for moms, especially moms of school-age children, is almost a second December. That's why I think of it as May-cember. All of the things that we do at the holidays, I think we know how to create space for, but all of these things that happen at the end of the school year seem to catch us off guard like every time. I know I was completely unprepared for just how many things happen at the end of the school year when you have children in school. And this year in my household, I have a senior in high school. So for any of you who have parented a senior in high school through that year, there's a lot of extra stuff added into senior year. And it's all delicious, right? It's just wonderful stuff that we remember doing when we were seniors, which by the way, seems like it should still be my turn to be a senior. It's almost hard to get my head around that I have a senior graduating from high school. But they have so many things happening that we want to be a part of and we want to savor because we're so conscious of the fact that it's the last version of these things. The everything from AP exams to awards nights and, the final sporting event or the final theater event. In my case, theater more than sports for my senior. We had a fine arts signing day where anyone from the school who was entering a fine arts major, had a signing the same way that the athletes do. We have prom, graduation, like planning a graduation party of our own, and just, emotions galore sort of running on top of all of this, and a deep desire to be present and soak in every millisecond of that experience is a part of like what is making this season particularly full. And of course, I have two other children who also have all of the May surge activities. So we have club volleyball coming to a close with my youngest. My son has been running track this year, so we've had all of the meets for him. We have course selection for next year for their grade levels. We have, all of the end of year celebrations and field trips and experiences that are baked in. And then we get to teacher gifts and the list goes on, right? May is just so full as a parent. And this year, I added right on top of that 3 really big projects at work, ones that I was making an argument in my mind maybe needed to wait until after this surge, March, April, and May, everything kind of leading into the end of the year. Maybe it would be a better idea to push the inception of these projects into the summer. But there was a lot of momentum and a lot of energy within my heart and my team to push forward. And so over the last few months, and you might have seen some of this coming out, we have had a new brand look. Like we changed the core visual elements of how we present Brilliant Balance visually in the world. So the marketer in me, makes my heart flutter because I love this stuff, the design elements of it and the branding and what that helps us to communicate. And I think I've started to hear from people who listen to the show and people who are on our list that they're really noticing, right? The way the brand is showing up visually differently. And then we decided, well, that's going to create a domino effect into our website. So we relaunched the Brilliant Balance website. If you haven't seen that yet, it's at brilliant-balance.com. Complete overhaul, like changed every single page of the site with an exceptional designer who I was so grateful to find and work with. First of all, the brand look was with one designer who I was so grateful to find and have the chance to work with. Both of these women, just extraordinary external partners to my team that we were able to leverage to really help us with fresh eyes look at the brand and then bring that to life in a website. That, of course, required new photography. So we threw in all the upheaval of a photo shoot in the midst of this. And then the biggest thing was conceiving and then developing and launching a new program within Brilliant Balance. So it had been 3 years since 2020, since we had launched a brand new program, coaching experience. And so that came into being kind of in this same period of time from March, April, May, we've been working on this and getting it out into the world. So this is what a surge looks like in my life these days. I added a little bit of travel for me related to work. I take a group every year to Canyon Ranch. So I had that experience being planned. I'm actually going to talk about that on the podcast, some of my reflections from Canyon Ranch in an upcoming episode. And that takes us out of our rhythm at home a little bit. My husband had some travel. My husband had a milestone birthday, kind of sitting in the middle of all of this stuff. Hi, it's Cheryl Ann. Thanks for listening. Did you know that the ideas I share on this show are things I also can help you implement? If you want me in your corner helping you find more time for what fills you up, go to brilliant-balance.com/schedule and sign up for a free exploratory call. Give yourself this time. You'll be so glad you did. And so I share that only to give you context on what does a surge look like for me. And one thing that's really important to note here is all of that is positive, right? Every single thing that I just mentioned is positive and happy and delightful, right? There's nothing in there that's painful. And yet, the traditional narrative, the common narrative around one of these surges can have a little bit of woe is me, right? We can get into a little bit of a victim mindset of like, oh, I can't believe I have so much happening. I'm so busy. I'm so tired. And I think part of what carries me through these surges is reminding myself that this is the good stuff. These are things that are exciting and that I want to remember. And I'm excited about putting out into the world. They really energize me. They really are creatively fulfilling in the case of the work projects, and they're emotionally fulfilling in the case of, these milestones with the kids and my husband. And so that framing of my life is full and this is a surge feels really different to me than my life is so busy and I'm going to get taken under. Right? I can hear the difference in those two phrases when I say them. Within our program, I refer to this as whitewater. And there's kind of a whole story that we tell and training that I deliver around the concept of whitewater. And I won't get into that today, but I think you get the essence of it when I'm talking about it, like these waves and the surge, that there's more happening here, more to pay attention to, but it's also more exciting. Right? It's not very exciting to be at the ocean when the waves aren't moving. It's calming. It's wonderful, but it doesn't have the same level of like excitement. And so that's a big piece of what I think is associated with these seasons is there's an elevated level of excitement. So for me, in my body, the way I experience that is it's like the volume gets turned up on everything. So I find that I'm talking faster, I'm breathing faster, my heart is beating faster. Sometimes I almost feel like I'm spinning a little bit. I need to sort of like land myself back in my body, ground myself, right? And I think of that, the phrase that's helpful for me is I need to drop in. I'm sort of hovering up above myself and I need to consciously drop in order to be in the moment. And some of the ways to do that preventively are making sure that I'm getting enough sleep, just doubling down on, reprioritizing the importance of sleep, finding pockets in my day to intentionally bring the pace down. Lately, what that has looked like for me, and I always admit this is a newer practice for me, but it has looked like doing a short, like 5 to 10 minute meditation, often with the guidance of an app where there's someone speaking a guided meditation versus me trying to sit in silence for 5 or 10 minutes. Although I suspect that would be highly effective once I figure out how to do it with consistency. Even changing my posture for that. So, if I lie down on the floor with my legs like up against a wall, that is a super calming pose for me to be in. Finding a little bit of time alone, like stepping away from all the action and getting into a room of my home or getting into my car or, finding a space where I'm just not being talked at by people and I'm not being notified by a device and I can just sort of be for a few minutes is a way to regroup so that I can go back and find that cadence and that flow. I think another thing I noticed myself doing in this season is intentionally editing out anything that was extraneous or unnecessary. Some of the extras, I would say to myself, we're going to choose ease here. What's the path where we can choose to find a little bit of ease? And Sometimes when I'm like, oh, can I squeeze that one more thing in? Can I do both of these things? Can I make this extra touch happen? The choice to say I'm going to choose ease is the helpful prompt for me to like dial it back just a notch so that I can breathe again, so that I can see what's coming next. So that cadence word is also very, very helpful to me during these seasons where things feel like they're moving pretty quickly. And especially when I'm starting to feel spinny, that sensation I was describing. Maybe that resonates with you, maybe it doesn't. But for me, it's almost like I'm swept up in something bigger than myself. Like I'm not in charge of the pacing and the momentum. And I have to decide, am I going to ride that and just let it be sort of like a fun but wild ride? Or am I going to try to shift that gear back a little bit where I can be back in control of the pacing? And the reason this matters to me so much, to bring some consciousness to these seasons and to really kind of think about, are there patterns here that are helpful to us? Are there patterns that are not so helpful that we might want to break? Is because it's not going to end anytime soon. I do think these big surges, the biggest crests, yes, that seems to sort of quiet a little bit. But in my life, right around the corner, I mean, practically no sooner do we wrap up a graduation party than we have college orientation in June. You know, we finish one milestone birthday with my husband, and then my daughter will turn 13 in July. My son will turn 16 in August. So, you know, they come in quickly. We finish club volleyball in the middle of May. And by the first week of July, we're in tryouts for the next season. You know, there's a very short break. All of the beginnings, like we're celebrating some quote unquote endings, right? Milestones, finish lines in graduation, but then we're celebrating that beginning of sending a child off to college in August. So I think that's why it's so critical to me to think about, how do I find my way through these seasons with my heart intact, my body intact, my spirit intact, my family intact, my health intact, so that I can sustain it. Because if I ran even harder, if I pushed even harder, then the pattern becomes crash, right? It's like sprint and crash, sprint and crash. And finding this cadence where you can sort of slow down just enough to catch your breath and pick it up again, slow down just enough to catch your breath and pick it up again, allows you to sustain this level of fullness for a longer time. And that's what I want, you know, and maybe you do too. Maybe when you think about the work you want to do and the ideas that you have creatively and the family experiences that you're trying to cultivate and, you know, the leisure that you want to build into your life, maybe you're trying to find a way to build that cadence. And I would just encourage you to do that. You know, if we can support you, all the better. That is exactly why Brilliant Balance exists, is to support you in finding that cadence. But no matter how you do it, I just want to underscore how much better it can feel to even ride through these surges when you have some of these tools and some of these reminders of things to keep top of mind. So those are some behind the scenes sneak peeks of things that are happening around here in this particular season that I am navigating. I am confident you have your own, and I wish you well as you get through the rest of May-December and into what I hope is a bit of a breather come summer. That is all for today, my friends. Until next time, let's be brilliant.
This is the podcastfactory.com.